Two people, same salary, same city, same job. 10 years later, one of them has $180,000 in savings, zero debt, and a growing investment portfolio. The other one is broke, stressed, and wondering where all the money went. Same income, completely different results. And here's the part that nobody talks about. The difference had almost nothing to do with math. It had nothing to do with spreadsheets, budgeting apps, or financial literacy courses. The real difference was happening inside their brains, in the wiring, in the psychology. Because here's the truth that most people are never taught. Money management is not a skill. It's a set of psychological habits deeply embedded in your nervous system. And the people who are exceptional at managing money, the ones who seem almost effortlessly in control of their finances, they think differently at a neurological level. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how. By the end of this video, you're going to understand what's happening inside the brain of a financially disciplined person that most people will never figure out. We're talking real neuroscience, real psychology, studies from Harvard, Stanford, behavioral economics research, and decades of human behavior research, all broken down in a way that actually makes sense. So stay with me, because one of the insights we're going to cover later, around the middle of this video, might completely change how you look at your own relationship with money. It did for me. Let's get into it. Before we dive in, I want to be clear about something. This video is not about hacks. It's not 10 ways to save money. You can find that stuff anywhere. This is about something deeper, the actual psychological architecture of someone who genuinely masters their money, the invisible patterns running in the background of their mind every single day. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people try to fix their money problems with information. They read articles, watch videos, download budgeting apps, and for about 2 weeks, it works. Then life happens, and they're back to square one. Why? Because the problem was never information. The problem is psychology. It's identity. It's how the brain processes pleasure, fear, and reward when money is involved. And the moment you understand that, really understand it, everything changes. So we're going to cover 10 psychological traits that separate people with extreme money management skills from everyone else. Each one is rooted in actual neuroscience or behavioral psychology research, and each one is something you can begin applying to your own life, starting today. Let's go. 1. They delay gratification without hating themselves for it. You've probably heard of the famous Stanford marshmallow experiment. In the 1960s and 70s, psychologist Walter Mischel sat children in a room with a single marshmallow in front of them. The deal was simple. Wait 15 minutes without eating it, and you'll get 2 marshmallows. Some kids ate it immediately. Others waited. The follow-up research over decades was extraordinary. The children who waited, who delayed that small, immediate gratification, grew up to have higher SAT scores, better health outcomes, lower rates of substance abuse, and significantly more financial stability. Now here's what's fascinating from a neuroscience perspective. When the brain sees an immediate reward, money on the table right now, a sale happening today, a purchase you want to make, the limbic system fires up. That's the ancient, emotional, impulsive part of your brain. It floods with dopamine, and it screams, "Do it now!" The people with poor money management don't have bad willpower. They're just more neurologically reactive to that immediate pull. Their limbic system is louder. But here's the real insight. People with exceptional money management don't actually feel less desire. They feel it just as strongly. The difference is that their prefrontal cortex, the rational, planning part of the brain, has been trained through habit and experience to intervene, to pause, to ask, is this future me's problem, or is this current me making a smart move? And the brilliant part? They've learned to make that pause feel good, not punishing, not restrictive. They reframe delayed gratification as a form of power, as winning, not as missing out. That mental reframe is enormous, because the moment you associate saving with sacrifice, you've already lost the psychological battle. Practically speaking, what does this look like? These people don't white-knuckle their impulses. They remove the decision entirely. automatic transfers to savings accounts on payday, automatic investment contributions. They design their environment so the impulsive brain never even gets a vote. This is called choice architecture, and they use it like a tool. 2. They have a fundamentally different relationship with loss. Here's something that will genuinely blow your mind. Research by Nobel Prize-winning psychologist Daniel Kahneman showed that the psychological pain of losing $100 is roughly twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining $100. Read that again. Losing $100 feels twice as bad as gaining $100 feels good. This is called loss aversion, and it is one of the most powerful forces shaping every financial decision you make. And for most people, it works against them. They avoid investing because they're terrified of losing. They hold on to bad financial decisions too long because selling means admitting a loss. They spend money quickly because somehow spending feels less like losing it than watching a number sit in an account. But here's where people with high money management skills are wired differently. Not because they don't feel loss aversion, but because they've learned to use it strategically. They've internalized something profound. Inaction has a cost, too. Not investing isn't safe. Not saving isn't neutral. The money sitting idle, the opportunity you didn't take, that is also a loss. You just don't feel it as viscerally because there's no number going down on a screen. A Harvard Business School study on investor behavior found that people who framed inaction as a potential loss, not just action, made significantly better long-term financial decisions because they activated that loss aversion response against their own inertia. So when a financially disciplined person thinks about not saving this month, their brain flags it as a loss. Not saving feels painful, and that pain motivates action. They've essentially reverse-engineered a cognitive bias to work in their favor. Practically, how do you start doing this? Change how you talk to yourself about financial decisions. Stop saying, "I'm saving $500 this month." Start saying, "I'm not losing $500 to future me this month." Same action, completely different neurological response. Try it. It sounds small, but the research is clear. Framing matters enormously to the brain. 3. They don't make financial decisions under emotional influence. Have you ever made a purchase you later regretted when you were stressed, sad, or bored? Of course you have. We all have. There's a name for this in behavioral economics. It's called emotional spending, and it's driven by a very specific brain mechanism. When you're experiencing negative emotions, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, your brain seeks dopamine hits to compensate. And buying things is one of the fastest dopamine triggers available to a modern human being. Retail therapy isn't just a phrase, it's a literal neurochemical event. A study published in the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that sadness specifically increases what researchers call impatient consumption, the tendency to want things now, spend freely, and undervalue future consequences. When you're sad, your brain narrows its time horizon. Future you becomes almost invisible. Now, here's where people with exceptional money management are different. It's not that they never feel emotions, it's that they've built systems that prevent emotional states from directly triggering financial decisions. This is what psychologists call a temporal buffer, a gap between impulse and action. Some people call it the 24-hour rule. You have to wait a day before any purchase over a certain amount. Others have it as a number in their head. Anything over $50 gets thought about for 48 hours. But more than the rule itself, what these people have developed is emotional self-awareness around money. They notice when they're in an emotional state, and they've learned to say, "I'm stressed right now, so my brain is looking for a dopamine shortcut. This is not a real financial decision. This is my nervous system trying to self-soothe." That one sentence, that one moment of self-awareness, it changes everything. The brain, when it knows what it's doing, loses some of its power over you. It's like turning on the lights in a room that was dark. Awareness is the antidote. 4. They think in systems, not willpower. Here's a belief that is quietly destroying most people's financial lives: the idea that discipline is about willpower. It's not, and the science is extremely clear on this. Roy Baumeister's famous research at Florida State University introduced the concept of ego depletion, the idea that willpower is a finite resource. Every decision you make, every time you resist an impulse, every moment of mental effort drains from the same cognitive tank. By the end of a long day, your financial decision-making is measurably worse than it was in the morning. This is why people make bad money decisions when they're tired, why grocery shopping after work without a list costs you 30% more, why those late-night impulse purchases keep happening. Your willpower tank is empty, your brain is running on fumes, and the impulsive, reward-seeking part of your mind takes over. People with exceptional money management skills don't rely on willpower. They don't trust themselves to remember to save. They don't hope they'll feel like being responsible. They build systems: automated savings, automated investments, predetermined spending categories, subscriptions tracked on a single spreadsheet reviewed monthly, a financial date with themselves every Sunday for 20 minutes, a single checking account for spending with a transfer ceiling they never cross. The system does the work. The brain stays out of it. James Clear, in his research on habit formation, calls this concept designing for the path of least resistance. People with high money skills make the good choice the easy choice, and they make the bad choice harder to access. They move the marshmallow to another room. You don't overcome temptation, you architect around it.
5. They have a deeply internalized financial identity. This is one of the most underrated psychological traits on this entire list, and most personal finance content completely ignores it. The people who are truly extraordinary at managing money don't just do financially responsible things. They are financially responsible people. There's a massive difference. When you see yourself as someone who is trying to be better with money, every decision is a struggle. Every choice requires motivation. You're fighting against a default self. But when your financial discipline has become part of your identity, when it's genuinely who you are, the decision-making changes entirely. You don't spend impulsively because that would be inconsistent with who you are. And humans are deeply, neurologically motivated to be consistent with their self-concept. Psychologist Carol Dweck's research at Stanford on identity and behavior shows that the people who say, "I am," not "I want to be," change their behavior at a far deeper level. Identity-level change is the deepest, most durable form of behavioral change. So how does someone get there? It usually starts small, with tiny decisions that signal to your own brain, "This is who I am." You put $50 in savings not because it changes your financial picture dramatically, but because it says to your subconscious self, "I am someone who saves." You track your spending not because you're going to analyze it for hours, but because it reinforces, "I am someone who pays attention to their money." Each small action is a vote for the identity you're building, and over time, enough votes and the identity starts to stick. This is why motivation-based approaches fail long-term. Motivation comes and goes. Identity stays. Okay, we're about halfway through, and I want to stop for a second because I think this is the moment I mentioned at the beginning, the insight that changes how you see everything. Everything we've covered so far, the delayed gratification, the loss aversion reframe, the systems over willpower, all of it has a common thread, and here it is. People with extreme money management skills have a fundamentally different relationship with their future self. Research by neurologist Dr. Jason Mitchell at Harvard found something extraordinary. When most people think about their future self, the brain activates the same neural regions it uses to think about strangers, not themselves, strangers. Your future self, the version of you who has to live with your financial decisions, is neurologically a different person to your current brain. Which means when you spend impulsively today, your brain is essentially taking money from a stranger.
There's no empathy, no connection, no responsibility. But people with high financial discipline, brain imaging studies show they have stronger neural connectivity between their present and future self representations. Their future self feels real to them, close, important, worth protecting. This isn't luck. This is a trained cognitive habit. The people who visualize their future selves specifically and regularly, who give that future person a face, a name, a story, they make dramatically better financial decisions in the present because they're no longer sacrificing for some vague, abstract concept. They're protecting someone they care about. Think about that.
6. They understand hedonic adaptation and fight it. Here's something your brain does that is quietly making you poorer every single year. It's called hedonic adaptation. Whatever you buy, whatever upgrade you make to your lifestyle, your brain adapts to it within weeks and returns to its baseline level of happiness. The new car smell fades. The bigger apartment becomes just the apartment. The designer bag becomes ordinary. And then you need the next thing to feel the same level of satisfaction you felt before. This is the hedonic treadmill, and almost every financially struggling person is running on it without knowing it. Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology showed that increases in income and consumption produce only temporary increases in life satisfaction. The brain normalizes upward quickly, but it does not easily normalize downward, which is why lifestyle inflation is so dangerous. It's easy to upgrade. It's genuinely psychologically painful to downgrade, and that asymmetry traps people. People with high money management skills have learned to actively interrupt this cycle. How? By practicing what psychologists call savoring. Consciously slowing down and experiencing appreciation for what you already have before reaching for something new. By deliberately delaying upgrades even when they can afford them, not because of deprivation, but because they understand that the satisfaction they'd feel from the upgrade will be temporary, while the money saved is permanent. They also celebrate purchasing something, using it and appreciating it, rather than immediately thinking about what's next. It sounds simple, but it's extraordinarily rare in a consumer culture designed to keep you perpetually dissatisfied. The goal isn't to never spend. The goal is to spend on things that genuinely and durably improve your life and to resist the brain's pressure to upgrade just because it's adapted.
7. They are comfortable with financial ambiguity. Most people want financial certainty. They want to know exactly how much they'll have at retirement, exactly how their investments will perform, exactly when the right time to buy a house is. And when that certainty doesn't come, which it never does because the future is inherently uncertain, the anxiety becomes so overwhelming that they do nothing. Psychologists call this analysis paralysis, and it's directly rooted in intolerance of uncertainty, which research consistently identifies as one of the key drivers of financial inaction. People with exceptional money management have developed something powerful, a high tolerance for financial ambiguity. They've internalized that uncertainty is not danger. It is simply the nature of any complex system, including money markets, economies, and personal circumstances. They don't need to know exactly what will happen. They need to know they're making the best decision available with the information they have right now. This comes from what psychologists call an internal locus of control, the deeply held belief that your actions matter, that your choices shape outcomes, even in uncertain environments. They're not fatalistic. They're not paralyzed. They move forward knowing they'll adjust as they learn more. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that people with high internal locus of control accumulate significantly more wealth over their lifetimes, not because they're smarter or luckier, but because they act consistently, even imperfectly. Done is better than perfect in personal finance. An imperfect savings plan started today beats a perfect plan started 5 years from now. 8. They separate their emotions from their net worth. There's a silent epidemic in personal finance, and almost nobody talks about it. Millions of people have deeply entangled their sense of self-worth with their financial worth, and this psychological merger is catastrophic. When your self-esteem rises and falls with your bank account balance, when a good month makes you feel valuable and a bad month makes you feel like a failure, you're not just managing money badly, you're running an emotional management strategy through your finances, and that is extremely, dangerously expensive. People who overspend to look successful, who avoid checking their accounts because it's too emotionally painful, who refuse to negotiate salaries because it feels like they're putting a number on their value as a person, this is all the same underlying issue, financial decisions being used as a proxy for self-worth. Behavioral economists at Yale published research showing that people who tie their identity tightly to financial outcomes make significantly more irrational financial decisions, specifically because protecting their self-image becomes a higher priority than making sound choices. They double down on bad investments rather than admit mistakes. They keep up appearances rather than cut expenses. They make financial decisions based on what it says about them, not what it does for them. People with high money management skills have done the psychological work to separate these two things. Their net worth is a number. It reflects choices and circumstances, not identity. It can go up, it can go down. It's data, not identity. This separation is freedom, because when you're no longer emotionally threatened by financial information, bad months, market dips, mistakes, you can see it clearly and respond rationally.
9. They have mastered the art of mental accounting in their favor. Here's a fascinating psychological quirk that almost everyone has, but most people have no idea about. Richard Thaler, who won the Nobel Prize in economics, discovered that humans don't treat money as a fungible, interchangeable resource the way basic economic theory assumes. Instead, we unconsciously sort money into different mental accounts, and money in different accounts behaves completely differently to us psychologically. This is why someone can have $5,000 in a savings account they won't touch while carrying $3,000 in credit card debt at 20% interest. Mathematically, they should pay off the debt, but psychologically, the savings feels like security. The debt feels like a different account, different rules. This is called mental accounting, and for most people, it works against them. They spend freely from certain mental accounts, their fun money, while hoarding others. They treat a tax refund as found money and blow it, even though it's their own money they overpaid all year. But people with exceptional money management skills have figured out how to use mental accounting intentionally, as a tool, not a trap. They create separate physical accounts for separate purposes, not because it's financially necessary, but because having a vacation account that's visually distinct makes it psychologically easier to not touch. They give every dollar a name and a job. This isn't just good budgeting advice, it's working with how the human brain actually processes money, not against it. Research on goal-labeled savings accounts from the National Bureau of Economic Research showed that people who named specific accounts for specific goals saved between 30 and 36% more than those with generic savings accounts. Same income, same interest rate. The label changed behavior. Words matter. Accounts matter. Structure is psychology. 10. They have a long-game mindset backed by vivid vision. We've saved the most powerful one for last. Everything else we've talked about, the systems, the identity, the emotional regulation, the reframing, all of it gets dramatically amplified by this one thing, a vivid, emotionally compelling vision of the future. And I don't mean vague goals like I want to be rich or I want to be debt-free. I mean a specific, sensory, emotionally detailed picture of exactly what your financial success looks like, feels like, and means to you. Here's the neuroscience. When you vividly imagine a future scenario, your brain activates nearly identical neural pathways as when you actually experience it. The prefrontal cortex, the hippocampus, and the limbic system all engage. And if that imagined future is emotionally compelling enough, if it generates real feeling,
It begins to compete with immediate impulses at a neurological level. Research from Stanford's Virtual Human Interaction Lab, led by Jeremy Bailenson, found that people who showed them aged-up virtual versions of their future selves, literally showing them what they might look like at 65, dramatically increased the amount of money they subsequently chose to save. Seeing the future self made them feel more connected to it, more responsible for it. You don't need VR technology to get this effect, but you do need to do the mental work of making your future self real. Not, "I'll have money in retirement." Instead, "I'm 62. I wake up in a home I love. I have no alarm, no financial stress. I spend my mornings doing work I chose because I chose it. My children are financially secure. I helped people I love. I did that because of decisions I made in my 30s. That kind of vision, specific, sensory, emotionally loaded, creates what psychologists call future-oriented identity motivation. Your future self becomes someone you're working toward protecting and building, and that changes every financial decision you make today. People with extraordinary money management skills don't budget to survive. They save to become someone. They invest toward a version of life they've already imagined and committed to.
That's not discipline. That's desire. Okay, let's talk about what this actually looks like in your life, starting now. First, automate everything: your savings, your investments, your bills. Remove the brain from as many financial decisions as possible. Every automated transfer is a vote for your future self that doesn't require a single unit of willpower. Second, build a temporal buffer. Before any purchase over a threshold you set, whether it's $20 or $200, you wait. 24 hours minimum. You sleep on it. Most impulsive purchases quietly evaporate during that pause. Third, name your accounts. Create a physical account or a digital sub-account for every major goal. Name it Morocco 2026 or Freedom Fund or House Down Payment. The name creates an emotional anchor that makes it harder to raid and easier to contribute to. Fourth, write a letter to your future self. Right now, this week, write a detailed description of the life your future self is living if you manage your money well. Make it specific. Make it emotional. Read it once a month. Keep that person real in your mind.
Fifth, reframe loss aversion. When you're tempted not to save this month, don't think about what you're gaining by keeping the money. Think about what you're losing, what future moment you're making harder, what option you're closing. Let the loss aversion work for you. Sixth, conduct a weekly financial check-in. 20 minutes every week. Look at your numbers without judgment. The goal isn't to feel good or bad about them. The goal is just to see clearly. Awareness is the first step in every psychological change. And seventh, the most important one, separate your worth from your wealth. Your bank account is not a report card on your value as a human being. It is a reflection of past behavior and circumstances, both of which can change. Give yourself the grace to start where you are without shame and the discipline to move forward without excuses. There's one final thing I want to leave you with, and nobody talks about this enough. The real reason most people struggle with money is not because they don't have enough information. It's because they don't believe at a deep level that they deserve financial security. Somewhere along the way, through childhood messages about money, through identity, through repeated failure, many people have formed an unconscious belief that financial stability is for other people, not for them. And when you don't believe you deserve it, your brain will find ways to self-sabotage. You'll spend when you should save. You'll stop just short of real progress. You'll find excuses to derail every good habit you build. Not because you're weak, but because success would conflict with a belief you don't even know you hold. The most important financial work you can do isn't budgeting. It's asking, what do I actually believe I deserve? And is that belief mine, or did someone hand it to me a long time ago? Because the people with extraordinary money management skills, they believe they are worth protecting. They believe their future self is worth investing in. And that belief, more than any spreadsheet, more than any app, more than any financial strategy, is the foundation that makes everything else possible. So, let's bring this all together. The psychology of people with extreme money management skills isn't about being cold, calculated, or robotic with money. It's about understanding how the brain works and designing your thoughts, habits, and environment to work with your neurology, not against it. They delay gratification without punishment. They use loss aversion strategically. They remove emotion from decisions without removing themselves from the process. They build systems instead of relying on willpower. They've built a financial identity, not just financial intentions. They understand hedonic adaptation and fight it with awareness. They tolerate uncertainty and act anyway. They separate their self-worth from their net worth. They use mental accounting as a tool, and they keep their future self vividly, emotionally alive in their mind every single day. None of these traits are genetic. None of them are reserved for people who grew up wealthy. Every single one of them is learnable, trainable, available to you right now. The real question isn't whether you can become someone with exceptional money management skills. The question is, are you willing to do the psychological work to become that person? I think you are. That's why you're still here. Here's what I want to know from you. Which one of these traits hit you hardest? Which one made you stop and think, that's me, that's exactly what I've been doing? Drop it in the comments below. Seriously, I read every single one, and seeing your realizations is genuinely one of my favorite parts of making these videos. And if this gave you even one thing to think differently about, share it with someone who needs it. Not to lecture them, just because you care about their future. That's what these conversations are for. And if you want to keep going deeper into the psychology of money, behavior, and building a life you're actually proud of, make sure you're subscribed. There's a lot more where this came from. Take care of your future self. They're counting on you.